Hello, everybody. I'm Jackie K. Cooper, and my entertainment rundown for today is the Jackie K. Cooper interview. We're started to do some interviews with primarily some authors because in this time of COVID, when we're still going to be covering the movies that we get to see, that we get links to, or whatever. We aren't going to movie theaters yet at this time, but this has also opened us up a chance to really get some great authors who are willing to talk about their work because they are pretty much held in from doing any kind of book tour except virtually. And so we had our interview with Daniel Silva, which I love the chance to talk to him. And then today we're going to be talking with Karin Slaughter, the author of the new book, The Silent Wife. And you can look for it on the bestseller charts because that's right where it's headed. So without further ado, we're going to move now into the Jackie K. Cooper interview with Karin Slaughter. Well, as promised, here we are with Karin Slaughter, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite authors, combination of the two. Don't always get that. You can really love the work and maybe the person's meh. But in your case, thumbs up to both.
Well,
How
you
you
too,
doing?
Jackie. I've loved you a really long time.
We've known each other a long time. I was trying to think of this. I didn't plan to even think about it. But the first time I met you that I remember, and you can dispute this, was in Hawkinsville, Georgia, at the Grand
At
Opera House.
Opera House. I do
Opera
remember
House.
that, yeah.
And St. John Flynn was
Uh-huh.
interviewing you.
Yep, I
And
remember that.
and St. John and I were good friends, and he said, I'm going to be over at the Opera House interviewing Karin Slaughter. And I said, Can I come? Can I come? And I went over and I got to meet you. And it's been a great friendship ever since.
Absolutely. And that Opera House was fascinating because it
Yes.
was historically detailed. So they had the whites entrance and the blacks entrance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All that, that we've passed, thank God, through,
Mm-hmm.
but was there as, evidentiary.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was
Well,
quite startling because I don't remember, I've seen signs like that in antique stores, but to see it in place, and that was the point, right? Because it's a historically accurate,
building.
certainly they weren't restricting people,
Mhm.
but just to see what it had looked like during Jim Crow was just so shocking.
Yeah. Yes.
So that, and meeting you, of course, those are the two things that stuck with me.
Absolutely. And I still hear from Sinjin. He's one of my favorite people, and he was so great about doing literary events with Georgia Public Broadcasting. I loved everything he did like that. But
Absolutely.
I wanted to get into this because it dawned on me, that this is your 20th book, and it's 2020. Have you done a book a year for the last 20 years?
I have. Yeah, actually, well, my first one was in 2001.
Okay, that
So
still works out.
I know, right? So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. It's hard to believe. And people are in the COVID right now,
In the
and
COVID.
time is like in a weird way bending, and because it still feels like February in a lot
Yeah.
of ways,
See,
except for
I
the heat.
froze. I froze in March.
Yeah,
March
yeah. So
13th. It was a Friday,
that's
and
what
every.
it feels like when I think about those 20 years. It feels like it was March.
Yeah, yeah. But we've never discussed this to my knowledge. But who discovered you? How did you get discovered? How did you get published? Did you get an agent first? Blah 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 blah.
Yes, I got an agent first, and I was really pleased to have an agent, and I thought I had to write "Being a Southerner," the next Gone with the Wind, and there's a reason why no one's successfully done that. Um, and so I thought, I want to write about families in the South and the things I know because they tell you to write what you know. And my agent, who I still have, she
Same agent.
signed me. Yeah, she signed me on that book and she shopped it out and nobody wanted it, which in retrospect was very lucky. But I got these very nice rejection letters that said, "We like your style, we like your voice, but we don't like this story." And so I took that as encouragement because, here's all these letters from these top editors in New York saying, "Hey, we like what you're doing, just find a different story." And I talked to my agent about what to do next. And I thought it was a good thing that she was saying, "What do you want to do next?" instead of, "See ya.
No,
It's been
don't
nice."
call us. We'll call you.
Yeah. And I said, "I love thrillers. That's what I read, but I don't think I can do it." And she said, "Well, give it a try. If it's good, send it to me. If it's not, try something else." So I had 17 days. I had a day job, but I had 17 days that I could take off because I never take vacation or anything. And I took all that time over a holiday and I wrote the basic structure of what became Blindsided. And I fleshed it out and all that, and I sent it to her, and she took about a year to read it. It felt like, actually, it was about 6 months. And she called me and she says, "I think I can get a deal for this." And I said, "Well, you're going to need to get a 2-book deal because I wrote the sequel because you took so long." And she said, "Okay, well, send me the sequel." And she took 3 months to read. And then she called. She says, "All right, I can get you a 2-book deal." And I said, "Well, it needs to be 3 because I'm halfway through the third one." And she said, "Stop writing."
Okay, let me ask you: Was Blindsided a Will Trent, a Sarah Linton book?
That was my Grant County series. Yeah, with
Uh,
Jeffrey and Sarah. And
and Sarah.
so, yeah, and at the time, William Morrow was not owned by HarperCollins. It was owned by Hearst.
Mhm.
And there was a guy who was the publisher of William Morrow who's looking for a young Southern female author writing thrillers. And so I was like hitting all those,
Ta-da!
right?
Check, check,
I know
check.
I got lucky, but then like within 3 months of me signing my contract, he got fired and HarperCollins bought William Morrow. So it was like, oh my God, the guy who really loved me is gone. But fortunately, they really advocated for my work, and that's the story of how it happened.
But how did you come up? I mean, Sarah and Jeffrey, even through this book, The Silent Wife, are
Hmm.
are such, I don't know, identifiable characters. How did they come to you, Karen? Was it based on somebody you knew, or did they just spring full out of your head?
Well, I don't think they're based on anyone I knew. I'm sure, I mean, I'd love to say I'm super creative and it's all from my magical head, but I'm sure there are some characteristics from people I knew. I mean, Sarah is a projection of who I'd want to be. She's a doctor, and I'm fascinated by medicine, but I'm really bad at science and math. She's much taller than me. She never worries about her weight. And she has red hair. Every
That's
woman at
Sarah.
one point has wanted red hair. Yeah. So she was like this wish list of things, which a lot of when you write your first book, that's usually what it is. And Jeffrey, I love reading crime fiction, and I was seeing a lot of stories about strong women where the man was not strong, right? He was just
Mhm.
like, he was in the supportive role, and she was clearly the boss and in charge. And I thought, I know a lot of strong women in relationships, myself included, and I don't want to be with somebody I can just railroad. That's not
Absolutely.
interesting to me. So I created Jeffrey as a response to that. And he's got an ex-football player swagger, and the name actually, I used when I was commuting to work. There was a law firm, and they had a sign on the side of the road, and I always was going too fast to slow down to see it. And I thought it said Tolliver, but it was Tolliver. So that's how it ended up. And Jeffrey was like after the giraffe from Toys R Us, but I didn't like it with a G, so I made it a J. So that's really the story
And
of
there you are.
Jeffrey. Yeah, yeah.
And, I don't want to jump all over the place. I have in my mind all this order, but I have to say, at the end of The Silent Wife, in your notes that you do, you say, surprise, surprise, I've been writing strong love stories all this time. Now, I don't know if you go back and you look at my reviews of your books, I have been saying that to you and to people that, okay, you get the drama, you get the violence, you get all, but in each book, just about, there is this theme of a love story, and especially in the Grant County and through the Will Trent, books with Sarah. It's beautiful. It's one of the most fascinating things about the books, and people will, I say to have you read Karin Slaughter's new book? And most people say, no, I can't wait till it comes out. But there are some who say, oh, I can't read her, she's too violent, blah 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 blah. And I said, but there's such a love story there, and I was glad to see you put that in your notes because it's true.
Well, it's an important part of the work, I think, because I am writing about really horrible things and horrible people. And I think when you have as your subject matter something so dark and criminals who are so capable and gleeful about breaking a social contract, that it's very important to balance that, and it's not just a love story about Jeffrey and Sarah or Will and Sarah. It's about her family, what a strong foundation she has with her family and her sister and her mom and dad. And, for Will, for instance, he's really made a family that he didn't have growing up with Faith and Amanda. I mean, Amanda, he often says, would be like the worst mother you could possibly have, or if your mother is a dingo,
Who is his boss?
who is his boss, but also has this really, I think, interesting backstory of how she's known him all his life, and he had no idea that she was
Well,
sort of this rudder
yeah,
dragging behind.
and you connected that because then Faith's mother and Amanda were friends or co-workers, and
Hmm.
it's all that coming together type thing that you do. And
Yeah,
and
I write about these bad things and I want to ground part of the books just in love, whether it's friendship or romantic or family or any kind of thing that balances out that darkness. Otherwise, my God, how horrible would it be to just read horrible bad people all the time?
but reading this book, and there's always been to me the Karin Slaughter humor that creeps in. But I made some notes actually because I never do this, but I was so fascinated by these slaughterisms that are in the book. Like at one point, Jeffrey and Sarah are having a fight, an argument, and you said it was the carousel from Logan's Run. Now,
Yeah.
Logan's Run was a futuristic movie with Michael York and Farrah Fawcett and Jenny Agutter. But what did you mean by it's the carousel from Logan's Run?
Well, the TV show, which was really awful, as awful as the movie was, and no offense to Farrah Fawcett because she did some great TV movies,
Yes, she
right?
did.
Like Betty Broderick, no, not Betty Broderick, I'm sorry, Diane Downs and The Burning Bed, and I mean
Hmm.
she did some great things. Charlie's Angels, of course.
Absolutely.
But there was a TV show based on it that was very short-lived, and at
With
the
Gregory
end,
Harrison.
yeah, there was like the carousel, and that's how they explained going on into the afterlife. But everybody
Ah,
was wearing white.
so you were
So,
ahead of me on that.
so
And not in age wise. I don't mean that.
slightly
I just meant I
television.
wasn't aware of that. That when I saw that, I thought I've got to ask her about this because it just stood out to me. It's the carousel from Logan's Run.
Yeah. Well,
Then
it's the sort of detail that Jeffrey would know, but that Sarah wouldn't necessarily, because the show was so bad, but also sci-fi, that a certain type of boy watched that show, but a girl would never watch it.
also there's a point where Faith is thinking about her relationship with Amanda because that Amanda is her boss also as well as Will's. And she said, why does she always have to be the wizard and I'm the one in the basket? I love that, Karen. It was just like, that was just like so clear in the relationship,
Yeah.
that come on, why do I have to be Toto in this thing? But you just pop these things in there, and it's like, oh my gosh, that was so good.
Well,
I
thank you.
love it.
I love those things. And I'm a little scamp. You know that going far back. I do have stealthy humor, but I again, like with the love, I think that it's important to have moments of humor. It just humanizes everybody
It
and it
does.
lights things up.
It does. It gives you insight into their personality with just a little smidge of humor.
Yeah.
But then you also use something in the thing that says C345 keeps the diaphragm alive. What's
Yes.
that? Is that actually something that they teach in medical school?
Yes, it is. And
Because
that came courtesy of my doctor, David, who I thank in the back of the book. He's been
absolutely.
helping me since the second novel. And he's retired now, and he's married to a pediatrician, so that's great for me because he can always ask her stuff.
Yeah.
And his brother works in a body farm, so like the whole family is just great for me.
Yeah.
And they're really wonderful people. But aside from that, the great thing about David is, and I know some people who want to be writers are watching this, and you can find the world expert in anything, but if they can't have a little imagination, then they're going to kill your story, right? Because
Right.
most doctors, especially like with what I have in The Silent Wife, that first scene where you see Sarah really being a doctor, right? Hands on. Any other doctor would probably say, no, that wouldn't happen, or no, you can't do that, or whatever. And David says, do you want the person to live or die? Let's go from there. So you have to have someone who has a little imagination and will give you direction. And a lot of times, he used to be a teacher also at a university, so he's a really good teacher. And he says I'm his favorite student because I can't kill anybody that he knows of. But
Figuratively.
yes, he'll tell me phrases from medical school, and there's so many different things like that they use in medical school to just kind of remind themselves. You think of the volume of information they have to learn, and 99% of it probably doesn't get used, but they have to know it.
Well,
They have all kinds of cool things like that.
I will tell you that I think we're talking about the same scene, but when save the person at all cost, the description of that activity with Sarah and Jeffrey was one of the most intense scenes I have ever read. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And it just kept on and on and on and on. And I thought, how does Karin know this stuff? Because you can be fed the knowledge, but feeding you the knowledge and you getting it down in readable form is a whole different thing. And you're so good at that.
It's a fairly short scene, page wise,
Seemed like
but
forever.
I know, but I hope so, because the tension is there. Because you go in thinking, oh, I've seen this a million times, it's going to be this. And then this particular thing doesn't work. So it gets even more intense. And that was me just saying, well, what if this thing we always see doesn't work? I have a basic understanding of anatomy. How would you access it at that point? And, it's funny because just on the internet, and you know this, probably you've heard about this, you haven't done it. You can look at all kinds of graphic pornography that is just shocking and hideous and horrible. But it's very hard to find actual surgeries that show inside the body, like veins and arteries and what that looks like. And so I had to go to this like portal to look at actual surgeries because I have to see something before I can describe it, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
like veins and arteries, we think, well, they're red and blue. Well, actually, they're not in the body. They're all the same color, and so what is it? I needed to know what anatomy, the interior anatomy looked like, so I could talk about it, and what the joints and the bones, and how thick they were, and that kind of stuff. So that was really a deep dive I had to do. But I thought, my God, if I was looking at porn, this would have taken 2 minutes, but because it's this, I had to click, yes, I understand. I'm 18. Yes, yes, yes. I'm
It was
probably
just
on the list at NSA now, anyway.
yeah, they're watching you. They're watching you. But it was. I don't know. It was intense. It was just amazing that the detail. But you knew that it was Sarah doing it, and you
Right,
had confidence in her, and so you went with it. You know,
right.
you know, it